Hello friends, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Elise, and this is my mystical bookshelf. And today I have a very special video series. Series, that's the right word I'm looking for. It's a video series of me rereading my Sarah Dessen collection. Because recently I have been finding so many Sarah Dessen books when I go thrifting at Goodwill, and it gave me the idea to reread them because I haven't read them since I was in high school. I can't remember the first one that I read, but it was definitely when I was in high school, and I was hooked ever since my first book. I love Sarah Dessen. She's one of my favorite authors. I follow her on Instagram, and I suggest that you do too if you really like her. And I'm also subscribed to her Friday 5 blog, where I think it's where she writes down 5 things that has like 5 good things that have happened during the week, or 5 things that she loves. I'm not really sure, because I don't know the theme of it every week. I don't think it has a theme. I think it's just 5 things that she wants to write down that week, which is really cool, and I really enjoy reading it. And I think Sarah Dessen is a great author. She's a great writer. Every one of her books is like a home run for me. Like, there's very few that I don't like fully resonate with. But yeah, so this is a video series for that. And at the very end, I'm going to tier rank all of the Sarah Dessen books that I've read, like how everyone does the S and the A and the B. I'm going to do all that, but I'm going to make my own tier titles and stuff, but I don't know what those titles are yet. But yeah, that's going to be at the very end. But the first book that I decided to read for my rereadathon is Dreamland. And I don't want to spoil how my tier ranking is going to go, but I just decided to reread this one first because it really resonates. It's one of Sarah's shorter novels. It's not very long. It's kind of, I don't know how to show it, but yeah, it's kind of thin. So like, let me give you a comparison. So here is The Truth About Forever. It's kind of a thick girl. But Dreamland, she's not very thick. She's very skinny. And I read this over Christmas, and it was so nice to revisit Sarah Dessen. It's like getting a hug from an old friend, really. Like, that's exactly how I feel rereading her books. It's like talking to a friend that I haven't seen in a long time. It's like you just pick it up and you know about them, you have an idea, but you don't remember exactly everything. And it's just like catching up and hearing about each other's lives and stuff. And that's just how I feel reading Sarah Dessen. And I think she's coming out with another book for 2025. I'm almost positive. I don't know when in 2025. I feel like she mentioned it in her last Friday 5 blog. I think she said June. I'm not for certain, but I'm pretty sure she said June. But yeah, so that kind of sparked me to reread her books because I love everything she's written. Even if it's not like a 5-star, it's still a really impactful book to me. And Dreamland is no exception to that rule. This is a good book. Like, it's one of her heavier books. I feel like Sarah, she has really fluffy, like, her main audience is like young adults. So, and by young adult, I mean someone who is between the ages of 15 and 20, maybe. Like 20 would be on the higher spectrum. But her books mainly deal with young girls who are in high school or who have just graduated high school. So like this book, Dreamland, is about Caitlin. And Caitlin, I think she's 16. I'm almost positive this takes place. Yeah, it says her sister ran away on the morning of her 16th birthday. So I think this whole book takes place in that whole year when she turned 16. So the premise of this book is that she has an older sister named Cassandra, who people call Cass. That's her nickname. And Cass is, I think, 2 years older than Caitlin. And she runs away from home. That's the big plot catalyst. So Cass runs away from home on Caitlin's 16th birthday, and that's kind of how the novel starts. It's like, first opening scene, you're really in the thick of it, and you don't know what's going on yet. You're really in the chaos of that morning of her 16th birthday. And everyone's worried. Her mom is hysterical. Her dad is on the phone with the police. They don't know where Cass went. They don't know why she ran away. Because Cass was going to start college, I think, that fall. I think she was going to go to Yale. And she got accepted, and everything was planned out for her. And I think she ran away because of all the pressures from her family and her parents. I've noticed in Sarah's novels, there's a theme of like, either the parents are very overbearing and they don't really let their daughter or daughters be who they are, like they stifle them a little bit, and they have this idealistic picture of who they want their daughter to be and not who their daughter really is. Or they're normal. They're more normal parents who are like kind of chill, but that doesn't happen very often in Sarah's books. I've noticed her books are more about parents who are controlling, I guess is the word I'm thinking of. Like they're very controlling of their daughters' lives. And I feel like that's a very common theme with life in general too. I think that's why Sarah's novels are very I think that's why people relate to them the most. I don't think the parents know that they're controlling, or they don't think they're being controlling. A lot of the time in Sarah's novels, these parents are kind of ignorant. They're like, they don't understand how their daughter could do this. They don't understand this character behavior. And it's kind of revealed in the end of most of her books, like, this is why I was acting this way, because you were treating me this way. And it's a nice conflict resolution in most of her books. Like, it's very tied up neatly in the end in most of her books, which is good. Excuse me. I love a good character resolution, and I love a good, like, the parents coming to terms with the way that they've behaved in the book. It's really nice because it's like you have the character development of the daughter, and then you have the character development of the mom and dad. Sometimes it's mainly just the mom, but sometimes it's the mom and the dad. But for this book, for Dreamland, it's definitely a character development, mainly between Caitlin, Cass, and her mom. Because her mom is I don't think she means to be controlling, but she is. She's very involved. And I think Cass ran away because of that, and I think it's revealed that she had just felt stifled, which I can understand. I mean, I wouldn't run away necessarily, but I can understand feeling stifled and wanting something more than what your parents expect of you, or wanting to be something different than what everyone hopes that you'll be. But that's kind of a subplot in Dreamland. The main plot in Dreamland is once Cass runs away, Caitlin kind of like changes her whole life perspective. And it's really imperative on her character. Like, that's the catalyst for all of Caitlin's behavior, is her sister running away. So Caitlin is 16 and she's a cheerleader. She's kind of got this ideal life. Like, she's just a normal, average 16-year-old girl. She's got one best friend whose name is Rima or Riva. I don't remember her friend's name, but honestly, that's not really a surprise because I feel like I have a hard time remembering people's names in books, even though I've read them a lot. But yeah, so she has her best friend, Rena. I just saw the name. Her best friend's name is Rena, and Rena convinces Caitlin to try out for cheerleading. So Caitlin does it, even though Caitlin feels kind of like average. Like, she doesn't really want to do cheerleading, but she figures, why not? It'll make her mom happy, because her mom kind of gets involved with Caitlin's cheerleading. That's like another catalyst in the book, because her mom was so involved with Cass. Like, she feels like her life is empty without Cass. So Caitlin kind of does the cheerleading to help placate her mom, which is very mature when you think about it. Like, to help your mom go through that with something that you know you don't really want to do, but you want to do it just to make them happy. That's kind of an interesting character trait that Caitlin has. And so she tries out for cheerleading with Rena, and she makes the team. And after she makes the team, that's when the book really kicks off with the main conflict. Because the main conflict is her dating Rogerson. And Rogerson is like a classic abusive boyfriend. And that's why this novel is very heavy. It's not as lighthearted as other Sarah's novels. It's more like, this is the story and this is all the bad stuff that happens because of it. Because there's a lot of really hard scenes to read in this book. And honestly, it makes me tear up a little bit, even just thinking about it. It makes me cry. I cried reading this book the first time, and I cried reading it the second time. And I'll probably cry every other time I read it, because it is really that powerful. And it's really hard to read, but it's like a car accident. You want to look away, but you can't, because it's just very compelling. So Caitlin meets Rogerson at a party, and it's really all downhill from there. Like, at first, it starts off very nice, like a normal teenage relationship. That's how it starts out. But that's how they all start out, isn't it? Like, you never really know someone until their actions speak louder than their words, really. Like, that's really the whole point of Sarah's novels, I think. So she meets Rogerson at this party, and then it's told, this story's different because it's told in like 3 parts. So like the first part is Cass and Cass running away, and then it's like a third of the way through, on page 87, it says Rogerson. So then this is the part where their relationship really kicks off, and I think what really kickstarts their relationship becoming abusive is Caitlin learning that Rogerson's dad is kind of abusive as well. He's abusive towards Rogerson. The one catalyst before the Rogerson chapters are that she sees his dad hit him, like, very, very hard. Like, hit him over and over, like punching him almost. And she doesn't know what to do, so she tries to comfort him. And he just says, leave me alone. Like, he doesn't want to confront that he has an abusive dad. He doesn't want to confront that he has family problems. And I think that Rogerson is abusive because of his dad, because we all have learned behavior that we learn from our parents, whether we like it or not. There's a behavior pattern in families, and apparently in Rogerson's family, that pattern is abuse towards either children or women, because I'm pretty sure Rogerson's dad probably hits his wife. I'm sure he's a wife beater. That's probably what he saw his dad do to his mom, and then he does it to his wife, and Rogerson does it to Caitlin. So it's just it's a weird vicious cycle. That's what I think this book is mainly about too. It's like cycle breaking, because Caitlin kind of puts up with Rogerson's like beatings for a lot of the book. Like the Rogerson part is a very long part of the book. That's the whole point. That's the whole conflict in the book, is that we figure out that Rogerson is beating up Caitlin, and he's very controlling, and he's very, like, he wants her to be a certain way, and he isolates her from her family, from her friends, and she changes her whole personality. And the whole catalyst was Cass, because Caitlin, she feels very lost without her sister, and she feels very like she can't talk to anybody, and she just wants to be the perfect daughter for her mom and dad, and she wants to be this perfect girlfriend for Rogerson. She's got a lot of pressure in this book, and it's really rough to read, because there's some scenes where Rogerson is very nice, and then there's other scenes where he has her on the ground and he's beating her up, like literally punching her in the face, pushing her down, hitting her back. It's really hard. Like, this novel is not for the lighthearted. Like, if you see this book, I want you to know that the trigger warning is beating someone up relentlessly when they tell you to stop. That's a big trigger. And it's hard to read. It's not an easy book to stomach, but I think it's an important book because a lot of girls go through this and that nobody even knows. And it's like, it's scary that it happens in high school, especially. Hello, friends. So, yeah, I was looking at my videos and I was going to edit them, and I realized that they got cut off, so that's kind of annoying. So I have to redo the last part from Dreamland. But what I was saying was that a lot of girls in high school probably go through what Caitlin goes through, and they don't tell anybody about it. And that is very scary and disheartening to me. And I think that was the point of Sarah's novel, is to highlight the fact that abusive relationships happen every day, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, and whether that we want to bring it to light or not. And so I'm so glad that someone had called the police on Rogerson, because even in real life, I don't know how often that would even happen, because nowadays it is common to feel like, which is understandable, it's common to feel like you can't trust anybody, which is very understandable. The world is a scary place, and these Sarah Dessen novels, I am assuming, took place when the world was in a very different state than what it is now. So calling the police on something that you see is not as common as it was back 20 years ago, for instance. And so I'm really happy that someone called the police, and the police came and saw what was happening to Caitlin. And then in the end, after the police are called, Rogerson is hauled off in handcuffs, and that is the best form of justice for a situation like this, because a lot of times the relationship continues and the girl ends up dead. That's what a lot of these relationships end up like. They end up with the guy not getting any consequences whatsoever, and they end with the girl dead. Like, that's how most of these relationships end. And I'm really glad that that's not how this ended. It would be realistic for it to continue to that progression, but I don't think Sarah wanted to go there, at least during this time. I'm not sure how old Sarah was when she first started writing, or how old she was when she had written Dreamland, but I don't think that was something she wanted to explore just yet. Maybe she will eventually. Maybe she will write an abusive relationship novel where it doesn't end happily, where maybe it's from the perspective of the girl's mom or something. That could be something that Sarah could explore later in life. But I feel like from what she said in her most recent blog post, I think her novels from here on out will deal with the girls who are just graduated high school, and that they will deal with the summer before they go to college. I think that's what she said. So they might have more of a lighthearted feel, but it would be interesting to see Sarah pick up the pen and write about another abusive relationship. But so yeah, once Rogerson is in handcuffs, her mom comes out and sees Caitlin, and she sees how small and skinny and scrawny and how beaten up she is and all the bruises across her body and along her face. And she just starts crying, which is understandable. She starts sobbing. And what I love about this and what I love about Caitlin's mom is that she apologizes to Caitlin. That is something that you don't see very often either with these mother-daughter relationships that are like this, where the mom is so enraptured with something that is going on in their life, and they just don't pay attention to their kid. And it's nice to see that Caitlin's mom apologized to her and was like, I am so sorry that this happened to you and that I didn't notice. She says she's sorry that she didn't notice. And that is something that I think a lot of girls need to hear, is that they need to hear an apology from their neglectful parent. And I think that is one of the most powerful scenes in the novel, is that the adult is taking accountability for their actions, and they're like, I'm sorry that you were going through this and I did not pay attention to you, or I'm sorry that I was so neglectful towards you. Like, that's something that's very powerful in a situation like this. So then after the Rogerson chapter, the final part of the book, part 3, I guess, is called Me. So it's Caitlin coming back to herself. She goes to rehab. I think she mainly goes to rehab not for the drugs necessarily. I don't think she was addicted to doing drugs. I don't think that was the point. I think what was the point of her going to a rehabilitation center is to go to the group therapy and like talk about what happened to her and talk about what was wrong and like to make her anxiety feel lessened. Because I think the main thing with Caitlin is she really struggled with anxiety and depression, and going to therapy, I think, helped her put into perspective what happened, and it put into perspective that none of this was her fault. Like, if you take away nothing else from this book, it is to know that if you are a victim of something, it is not your fault. It is definitely not your fault. If something like this happened to you or has happened to you, you are not at fault for it. Any abusive thing in life that happened to you, you are not at fault. And I think that is the biggest takeaway from this, is that there's no victim blaming. Like, everybody takes the blame for this. Nobody blames Caitlin for what happened. That is what I love about this novel, is there's no victim shaming. There's no like, oh, she let it happen, or she let it escalate this far, or she should have told someone, or she should have just laughed. No, there's no victim blaming. There's just accountability of the adults in her life for not recognizing that Caitlin was acting weird. And there are also accountability held for the people who maybe did notice Caitlin was acting weird but didn't do anything about it. And that's what I like, is that there's a lot of accountability in this novel. And I think that's also another important part of this novel, is being accountable for your actions and for not like blaming the victim in situations like this. So the novel ends on a very happy, like everything is cleared up type of note, and it also ends with Caitlin seeing her sister Cass after all of this has happened and after everything she's been through. They finally come back to each other, and she finally is able to see Cass and to talk to her and explain to her everything, because once Cass figures out that Caitlin was in an abusive relationship, she also feels responsible. But I think what's different about Caitlin's character is that she doesn't want anyone to feel responsible for what happened to her. Because really, in a situation like this, there is no one to blame except for Rogerson. Because Rogerson is the abuser, Caitlin was the victim, and yes, it's hard that nobody figured it out right away, but there's nobody to blame but Rogerson. And I think that's what's very mature about Caitlin, is that she doesn't want to blame anyone either. She doesn't blame herself. She doesn't blame anyone in her life. She blames Rogerson, and that's a healthy it's a healthy takeaway to get from that, is the blame the abuser. And then the book ends on a very uplifting note where she sees Cass and her and Cass hug. And that's basically how the novel ends, is that she's finally face to face with Cass after all this time has passed, and they can finally get back to their sisterly relationship that they want to have with one another. And I just really love the ending of this novel, and it really hits home that there's no one to blame but the abuser and stuff like this. And I think that's the most important thing about this novel, and that's why it's rated so highly, to me, in my opinion. And it's why it's one of my favorite Sarah Dessen novels. But yeah, so that concludes the first video of my Sarah Dessen rereadathon. And like I said, the last video will be me tier ranking everything. So stay tuned for that. But thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And if you would like to comment down below, and we can talk about Dreamland together, or we can talk about any Sarah Dessen book, or we can talk about any book in general together. But thank you for everything, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!